What is going on for everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets Haber. I'm recording from the dark because I had to have a little skin procedure, a little, I don't know, it's not preventative maintenance. It's, hopefully to save my life. But so I look like a tomato right now, and I'm not allowed to have sunlight or any kind of computer light or regular lights on me. So this is the best I got. We're going to talk with Sheets on this. I'm excited to be back. I haven't played in 4 days. I haven't done anything DFS related. That's the longest I've gone in a really long time. And yeah, man, I see Sheet sounds like you've been doing pretty well, and ready to get into baseball today. Whenever you tell me.
Yeah, we had a nice. You know what? I thought that I thought I held the fort yesterday. I did some much shorter videos, and I thought we did a decent job with the live stream. We had one. It's so funny. Like during the live stream, I had my hockey set up, and I had some time, because I don't have a lot to go through, right? And without the back and forth, you take care of everything really quickly. Yeah. And he says, "Yeah, do you mind if I ask a hockey question?" So he's asking, and so it got me looking at my lineups. I'm like, let me do one more projection run and one more run of my lineups. And I did one more run, and I actually had SaberSim on, and I reran some lineups in there. And because of the rerun of lineups, I got like 3rd, 5th, 10th, or something in like the hockey. So that worked out well, and it was a direct result of the live stream and the guy. So listen, if you guys have any questions, even if we're not about completely on point, as long as we're not that busy, I'd be more than happy. We also had an interesting kind of like philosophical discussion. Someone was asking me about 5-man versus 4-man stacks and things like that. Okay. So we talked about that for like a while. So take the opportunity when we're there.
You know what? Can we talk about that for a second to open the show? Because I think it's kind of relevant right now.
Sure.
And it supports it actually supports more of my non-stacking than I even thought. I read an article, I think it was on Friday when I was driving after we drove down. And it was talking about, look, because you have the strikeout rate is higher than usual. The home run rate is higher than ever. The average strikeout rate for the major leagues right now is Sandy Koufax for his career, just to give you an idea. That's how high it is. And the amounts of home runs are still, again, not as high, not the highest they've ever been, but they're right there. Home runs per hit is right there. Batting average is down, WOBA down. Even walks this year in general up from 15 years ago, but down for the last few years. It all supports trying to find the power and not necessarily needing to have the entire stack. Now, I still always mini stack and stack, and I'm not saying this is a hard and fast rule, but it's just interesting when you think about 1 out of every 4 batters striking out, and then you've got a guy with a 35% or a 40% K rate, and we're going to play 4 of these guys in the lineup from the same team. Is that the optimum way to go? And I'm not saying we shouldn't be generally, I think your general course, your general teams should be your stacks, but I think they can be 3 and 4 and 5, 3 and 4 and 5, but I don't think it's just a flat out 5, and everyone else treating it like that for so long had a lot to do with weaker pitchers coming into the league, hitters not trying to focus so much on home runs. Now, they always have been. They've been trying to find the better launch. This has been going on for years now, but it's getting better and better, which means players are more and more okay striking out, which is going to hurt your stacks, and they're more and more okay hitting home runs. Obviously, that's good for you, but you're hitting solo home runs. You have more solo home runs than you've ever had per home run in the history of baseball. That happens every year. It just supports a little bit less of this, and more runs are scored from home runs than they've ever been scored by. Those are all things that make it seem, just to a logical person even, doesn't that make sense why we wouldn't quite stack so hard or so max as possible? Sheet, does that make sense to you?
Well, no. So I took the opposite, not the opposite angle. What I was thinking is that when you have a big slate, right? I kind of made the comparison between baseball, DFS, and MMA/auto racing. So MMA auto racing, the winning GPP score is always going to be the optimal score, right? It's going to be the nuts. There's just not enough combinations, really. It's very rare to have a unique lineup in auto racing and in hockey. And in MMA. And the top score is almost always going to be the top possible score. Like there would be nothing that you could have done even if you knew the results ahead of time. But with baseball, with basketball and baseball and things like that, the optimal score in baseball is almost impossible to get.
Never going to happen. Yeah, maybe once in a blue moon.
And the reason why it's really impossible is because you just don't know which of those solo home run combinations are going to come together, because that's usually going to be the optimal is is the combination of like kind of solo home runs, right?
Right.
And so when you're playing like a big slate, it's even more impossible to get those solo home runs right. So you're just trying to win the tournament, and I think that you're probably more inclined to be willing to eat like a 5-man stack that has like, you know, not a solo home run in it.
Yeah, a
But just
guy with
has
a 5 and a 6 or a 5 and a 7 or something like that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so I just feel as though that the bigger the slate, like the more likely I guess the safer, I suppose, it would be to try to 5-man stack. You know what I mean? Because if that thing does hit, I mean, you know, you're never gonna lose. The optimal lineup is never going to beat you. You know what I mean? So and the shorter the slate is, the more likely it is that an optimal lineup can beat you. So that's what I was talking about yesterday.
So that is 100%. I agree with everything you just said. That's the general baseball. I'm trying to find the recent trends of why you can try to find different routes on things. And by the way, they're things I've always been doing, but now I feel more committed to. I feel better about having occasionally on smaller, especially on smaller slate days, a 3-3-1-1 or a 3-2-2-1 in baseball, which is not the way that other people tend to play. Although I've heard a lot of touts this year more than ever talking about how they are doing that. So
well, let me ask you this. So we talk about more trends. When you do a stack or whatever, and you do have like a one-off left over, there are certain things that I've asked of you that I don't want you to give contradictory advice, it's like kind of different advice. So when I ask like what's a good one-off here, sometimes you say, well, I want this guy's a one-off because he has more power, and yet another time you'll say, well, maybe this guy's a one-off because he's cheap, right? So like, what would be a better one-off, like an expensive power guy or a cheap like Rojas guy?
That's when it comes into position flexibility and things.
Okay.
I think that's really what matters. Like if you're talking about I mean, in general, it really could depend. Like like I said, and it is weird because if you don't believe in hot streaks, when Giancarlo Stanton starts going nuts like he was, you know what I mean, and you're not playing him, you're losing on those bets. But so during that time, it'd be him over a guy like who's the 2K shortstop, for example, from Minnesota. But that 2K shortstop from Minnesota on a weak shortstop slate might be more valuable than a Stanton in that situation.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, let's jump into it. We'll go game by game. I'm actually excited because it's been a while. I feel like it's always great when you get a little break and you sort of get to detach from all at least for me, all the emotional, hey, how did I do today kind of a thing. But I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, you want to start with Philly, Washington?
Yeah, you want to pull up your screen?
Yeah.
Let's do that, and we will Philly, Washington, huh? This is not the right slate that I've got in front of me. I mean, I know that I already looked at this stuff, but it's for some reason keeps bringing up something from 2 days ago.
So it's an interesting slate for you to get back into because they got this 111.
I know. Do I want to play like 20 over there? Or do I want to just focus more on a couple big ones? I don't know exactly what I want to do yet.
But the big ones are not really good.
I know. On FanDuel, there's good ones.
Right,
but yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's a good question. So what okay, why don't you start off real quick? I'm just trying to update my screen.
Yeah, so I have no interest in either of these pitchers, and with my initial looks at the stacks, I like Washington as one of my favorite stacks on the slate, both on FanDuel and on DraftKings. And let me just see if I can identify which are the top guys. Yeah, so Soto, since you've left, I don't know if you were watching, but Soto's back in the lineup. So there's Soto, Bell, Castro, Harrison, Schwarber, Turner. You can pick any 4 or 5 of those, and that seems to work. They'll probably be somewhat popular, I suppose, but that's okay. That's where I'm at in this game.
This feels very game stacky to me, so much so that I'm going to go to my little weather tools a little earlier than usual today. And I don't mean game stacky. So in baseball, people, get annoyed by the term game stack. It doesn't mean, because one happens, the other is going to happen. No, I'm talking about if there's good hitting conditions and I want to pick on both pitchers in a time where early in the season, you're not going to have as many good hitting conditions. You're going to want to know that stuff. So my first look at this is from that standpoint is, first, I want to pick on Fetty. Also, he just faced this team. and I want to pick on Chase Anderson. I don't always like to go as crazy with Chase Anderson as other people do. I think it's sort of like a misconception about him that he's just this complete gas can. Like, I think that we looked at it one time and like he'd gone like years without giving up 2 home runs in a game. Now, not that you need 2 off of them, you could get 1 and then get to the bullpen and all that stuff. But just in general, just as on big slates, I was sort of not thinking about him quite as heavily as maybe other people were, and maybe I should have even. No, I take that back. I don't think I should have. But Fetty and Chase Anderson, I am not impressed with either of these guys. I think both of them have question marks in the bullpen, even though they've got a couple good relievers. And these are 2 offenses that I tend to like to stack, especially when Soto is healthy, for a number of reasons. I really like the running ability. Like, this sounds crazy, but like no catcher has stolen base upside really, except for JT Realmuto. That's so it's a way you can get ahead in the position and know it, and people never play him because he's so expensive. You've also got great guys, around there. McCutcheon's been back this year. Segura has actually looked good lately. You've got Baum really cheap batting 5th, so that kind of fits in. You've got Bell and Soto on the other. Bell's too cheap. Soto is one of the best, and probably honestly too cheap. Like 5.3 for a guy who maybe should be 6K. And then Harrison and Turner, you both have the stolen base upside, especially with Turner, obviously. So those are the kind of guys I'm looking at in this game. And then I wouldn't cross off Rhys Hoskins. I'm sorry, I wouldn't cross off Didi Gregorius. And I know Hoskins has been terrible, but I wouldn't mind that either. I really like this whole game. Like you, it was one of the first ones. And I'm just going to look at my weather stuff because the weather looks fine. It's blowing side to side with a pretty good amount, actually. I just want to see the edge wise in terms of similar games in the past. Yeah, I mean, as of right now, I think this game is actually probably one of my favorites on this slate. So that's where I'm at.
All right.
I didn't want to give away everything with the weather, but it does look to be suppressing some power, which does worry me a little bit. But again, still like the stack.
Baltimore against the Mets. As you know, I will, as hopefully you guys know by now, I will never play a pitcher off of a no-hitter. So I would not be playing Means, even if I don't think I literally at any price. I mean, even if he were like, if he were 7,900, you know what would happen? He'd be a huge chalk, and I would fade that too. At 10-3, I think the game log watchers might not worry about the 10-3. He's got like nothing but 30s right the whole season. I think.
Okay, what else do you want?
No, I don't know what else you want.
Yeah.
It also goes along the lines of, he's also a lefty against the Mets, and if anything, I like to play the Mets against righties. So I just don't think I'm going to do it. So I'm not going to play Means. What's name Stroman is like an interesting second tier pitcher for me. If I can really hone in on some stats, I want to just, I won't say lock in, but really target. I would like to get to a second tier of pitchers, and Stroman is one of them. He's certainly not going to, strike out anybody or like strike out like this, a whole bunch of people, but he's a pretty good pitcher. If Peralta blows up, or, let's just say, I don't know how Buehler is going to blow up, but like, if Peralta blows up and, Brady Singer at huge chalk doesn't do so well, I mean, you're going to need maybe a second pitcher aside from those two. And Stroman's certainly in the mix for me. Again, I'm not going to be expecting all, huge amount of strikeouts, but certainly can keep the ball on the ground. And, I think he's okay. I didn't we get to either hitting environment. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I feel very similarly. And baseball is the one sport. I'm not a guy who says, and I don't do this in basketball, so I'm really not that guy because I think it goes the other way. I believe in riding the streaks. With pitchers, it's the exact opposite. When usually a no-hitter means you threw more pitches than you're usually comfortable throwing, and it almost always means you have a shorter leash than normal with your. So even if you're pitching well, and even if Means puts up 20 tonight, and that's not bad, but he might be out in the game after I don't know, before the 6th inning's over or something like that. If he's going good, if he's not going good, you could see him getting taken out a little bit early, which is the history we have of guys who throw no hitters. None more famous than your Mets. Well, not your Mets, but the Mets he was never the same afterwards after those 140 pitches. But I think Stroman is a terrific play here.
Who's that? Harvey?
No, the one he used to
Santana, whatever.
Santana. Yeah. He had pitched for Minnesota before.
Right. By the way, that ball totally hit the line. By the way, the left field.
Regardless, he didn't do it. It wasn't his fault. Anyway, wow, anti-Mets all of a sudden.
I'm just saying that it hit the line. That's all.
No. I hear you. I'm just kidding around. I think the Mets. I think that Stroman is a terrific play tonight, and we'll see where he stacks at the end of this. And today's, I know you've been doing the shorter videos. Today's might go a little bit longer, not than usual,
sure.
But more back to our normal length because I do think there's some things to figure out. And I don't have any interest in the bats on the Mets side. I don't think an unowned Pete Alonso in a spot where, hey, let's pretend this was opening day Sheets and Pete Alonso was facing Means. Don't you think he's like one of the more popular first basemen? I think
so. Absolutely.
And it's a lot just perception. And Means has always been pretty good, and he's figured it out this year. So he's the one-off that sort of stood out to me.
I'm in for that.
Yeah. All right. So you ready to go to Oakland and Boston?
Yeah. I was thinking that if I just eyeballed this, I would say, oh, am I going to be interested in maybe Eovaldi as like a kind of a SP2, but just not going to do it. Just there's better options for me after I looked at all of it. And likewise with Bassett, I'm just not going to get to either of these. And this is a situation that I come up with that I see a lot, where neither pitcher is in that great a spot, and neither bats are in that great a spot, and I end up just kind of fading all of it, just kind of going for like an average game. Like Eovaldi is just fine, Bassett is just fine. Neither of them are going to win the tournament, and likewise, the hitting are not going to win the tournament either. So that's kind of where I'm at with this game. It's kind of one of those middling games that's just not going to make my top lineups on any of the quadrants.
Yeah, I hear you. So here's the good and the like. Here's the problem with these guys. Like even Bassett when he struggles even Eovaldi who struggled and cost a lot of us some money when he, against Detroit last week. Even when he struggles, look at his just track record from this season. Now this won't last forever, obviously, but the guy hasn't given up a home run this year. Like that's he's got 8 starts under his belt and that no home run. That was his problem before. I don't like either of the pitchers like you, but and then you look at Bassett, same thing. Bassett eats up innings and doesn't give up power. Just doesn't allow that much hard contact. At least it leads to extra bases. That's a real problem. I mean, again, this is another one of those. If you played this game on opening day, you have a 10.5 run total in Boston. It's phenomenal hitting weather in Boston. I want to point that out. Serious bump to everything. So I do think you're going to try and want to mix in some parts of these bats, and let's try and I'll just say my favorite. And it's going to depend. I mean, look, if you're going to play a little like another couple Boston guys, maybe even just 2 other ones. These guys are really cheap. I mean, Frenchie Cordero is a good enough hitter with enough power at minimum cost. So Frenchie Cordero at $2K, I think, is in play. Bobby Dahlbeck has been terrible, but I still have the feeling that guy's going to come out of it at some point. Mitch Moreland, not the revenge thing. I don't do hitter revenge for baseball, but it is kind of weird how it's happened a lot this year. It seems it's worked out that way. Matt Olson, too cheap. I understand that we don't want every part of this, but I do want these pieces. I think Verdugo's too cheap. And then if there's one guy who I don't care about who gives up what, I'm always going to play. I'm going to try to, oh, wow, wait a minute. JD. Yeah. I always like to try and get to JD, but this is probably a day where I actually am not going to just because the prices of the guys around him. But I do like the 2 Oakland lefties, both first basemen. Unfortunately, can't use them together on DraftKings. And then on Boston, I think I like Verdugo and I like JD. It's just a lot of good guys to spend up.
They've been leading off. I mean, yesterday they led off with Marvin for some reason.
Yeah, I like Marwin. I mean, actually, you know what though? Like, the problem with Marwin Gonzalez is here's my thing with him, Sheik. So you can look at it. His game log will tell you the same. His career will tell you the same. He is a great guy to have as a 5th guy in your stack. You know what I mean? Okay. He's a great 5-man stack guy because he walks a ton. He gets on base. He keeps keeps things moving. He gets a lot of singles. Doesn't have the power that he used to, so he fits in really well to stacks. But as one-off, I don't feel incredible about it, even though you get a good spot in the order for a cheap guy. again, it's mostly going to be Verdugo, Cordero, and then the two lefties from Oakland in this game. I would consider Sean Murphy as well, potentially. Those are maybe even Laureano, but I don't want to get crazy with it. But I do think I want some pieces of that game, especially looking at how good the weather is.
Yeah. So for me, you talked me into it, or you didn't talk me out of it. I was going to say, revenge this, revenge that. But, Mitch Moreland probably took zillions of hours of batting practice with that short porch in right field but Fenway. And with Eovaldi just throwing freaking gas, you know what I mean? I'll try it. I'll probably try a little bit more.
Yeah, and by the way, two other teams that I still, again, bullpens have been. I actually think Oakland's bullpen will be really good. I'm still very iffy on Boston's. I know that the bullpen shouldn't mean everything, but if we can get some late inning shenanigans, that's sometimes how you win these tournaments. So I always am going to try and mention little bits of it. New York at Tampa Bay, and I'll tell you what, I expect these offenses to struggle today a little bit. You can always do the Yankee versus the lefty thing. Of course, they lose their first at bat against the lefty and Patino if they're at the top of the order. And the guys you'd want would be Stanton and Judge, obviously. It's going to be no one will play them. Terrific one-off for Stanton, especially because he's on fire. And actually, you know what? Judge is 4,500. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I take that back. Judge should be like almost prioritized at that price. That's kind of nuts. And he's going to face a lefty for at least a couple at bats. You get Voit back. You got Voit back already, and like he's 3.7. It's making me want to play these guys, but in the stadium downgrade, the bullpen game for a team that pitches bullpen games really well has me less excited. So I personally am not going to fall in love with this game. I actually think Jordan Montgomery will have a good outing. Not one we're going to be able to use him, but I think he has a good outing tonight.
Yeah, I pass. I pass on the hitting, and I just barely pass on Montgomery. He would, he'd be my 30 lineup guy. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm out.
Do you have another expensive outfielder that seems like, because like I've never seen Aaron Judge at this value in the history since he started playing. So I just was.
No, I mean, again, like a lot of things, something will depend on whether Coors plays. I mean, you get Grisham at 4,300, but
that's true.
But yeah, the expensive outfielders, and then there's Myers at 4,200. But aside from that, I mean, aside from like the specialty situations, that's why I consider Coors. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I'm not getting Judge. Should, right? I mean, he's under 5K.
It's 4,500 for a guy who, if you look at his career splits against lefties, it's
don't you feel as though Tampa's going to just they're going to do that Tampa thing where they just find the exact person that Judge doesn't want to face or something like that? Like
they have no choice. They have Yarborough's legitimately a starter. He just has.
I guess so. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And look, and he's good, by the way, too. I actually don't think Yarborough's a bad pitcher, but it's weird to see a Yankee against any lefty with a 4.2 run total, even in any stadium, like especially one that's indoors. So like it's not like there's wind blowing in. Anyway, Judge especially, but then if you wanted to get like a little cute Judge Stanton thing, I think you could be looking at. I think they both have huge power upside in this matchup. So obviously in every matchup, but this is a especially good one because especially good that the fact that they're not going to be owned. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
So this next game is the battle of the wise guy SP2s, as far as I'm concerned. Brady Singer is going to be the one that I think people most play. He's the one that's going to project the best, and he's going to one that's going to be viewed as the safest because he's against Detroit, right? I don't know why people think that. All Detroit does is score 10 runs a game. Right?
Isn't that crazy?
You know what I mean? You know what? He ranks for me as like the second best option also, So, and Detroit in this particular situation does not rate as that great, but I mean, hell, how many times are they're gonna score 10 runs before people stop attacking them every freaking game? I don't know. I know this guy stinks, but next thing you know, they got 10 runs, yes, Brady Singer does rate to be a very, very strong play. He makes a lot of stuff work, and certainly he's going to be considered as a top pitcher. Matt Boyd, is sort of not the opposite, but he's 6,300, and he has certainly upside. He has got good strikeout upside. He certainly has a worse matchup. He's got to deal with all kinds of good righty hitters, honestly. And he's got to deal with Perez. He's got to deal with Merrifield. He's got to deal with Soler. Not to mention, you know, who's been freaking locked in is Dozier's been hitting the ball better. To wit, I think I want to play those guys. So I kind of am into Matt Boyd as an SP2. You know, once I spread my lineups a little bit, Brady Singer will be the cash game play. Boyd will be the GPP play, and I definitely would. GPPs. I don't know how you don't play both sides of the hitting in this game. This is like the ultimate leverage,
right?
Right?
I we're gonna say it all.
Oh, really? This is the ultimate leverage spot, man. These are the two SP2s that people are going to play, and you can play hitting against them. I don't know. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, but we got like a lot of games, and you have teams that don't really like explode. Okay, so I'm always a fan of this Kansas City low-owned stack in general. We know this because they will run on everybody, and that just gives you such a much higher floor and ceiling because, you know, you look at Witt every time, and you're like, oh yeah, but he has to get multiple hits. He doesn't have that many home runs, and then it's like, oh, you know, a single, a walk, and 2 stolen bases, and 2 runs scored later. You're going, oh, okay, well, 20 fantasy points is 20 fantasy points. I kind of understand what you're saying. I would just point out that the weird part is Boyd has actually been very good in real life this year, with the exception of one bad outing against where I think that did he get hurt in that game or something? I don't know exactly what happened last time out against the White Sox. I'll have to double check. But I think he did get hurt because he's been gone.
There was something.
So really all of his other outings have been, he literally was 1 out away from a quality start against on opening day. Other than that, everything is a quality start basically, right? Yeah. Which means he's been awesome. But what happens to pitchers like this, and what KC does against pitchers who, even though this year his strikeout rate is down,
they just go take and wear them out.
No, they go the opposite. KC does the exact opposite. They chase early in the counts and just try to put the ball in play. And it's not, look, the funny part is they will strike out at times, but when you get a guy who's not necessarily overpowering, but a high strikeout guy, they did it with somebody else. Bieber, I think when he pitched against them, had it like that. Somebody else I can't think of off the top of my head, but, and I don't have all the stats, so I'm not trying to like sell it, but I can point out in the last time they faced, which was, you know, second to last outing for Boyd, he pitched 8 innings, was awesome, gave up only 3 hits and no runs, or 1 run, but but only 3 Ks. And that's where you get concerned a little bit about Boyd. Singer, you always should be concerned about that because he's just not a high strikeout guy. Yeah. Except for the last time he faced Detroit, he struck out 8 guys in 7 innings and put up 30 fantasy points. Now you could argue that could go the other way. It's not my favorite hitting environment. There's other things I think I'd rather attack, but I understand the leverage like idea. I just think both these guys have actually been just pretty good enough to where I think I'm probably leaning more towards using them. And if you're going to play a Colorado stack, just play Boyd instead of Singer. He's going to be significantly less owned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to reiterate, I mean, I do have Singer as my second top rated pitcher. We're just kind of talking.
I have got him up there too. I'm just saying that I also think there's a huge bust path there.
Yeah.
Or even his bust path could be like 5 innings, 1 strikeout and no runs. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and you get you 12 fantasy points or something. That's not, that's okay. You could take that tonight for 50.
No, you can't take that at 30% ownership though.
Right, exactly. But to take that as ownership is a little different. Which is going to bring
because then you've got to worry about. I mean, we'll talk about Danielson Lamet in a minute, but you got to talk. There are guys that could put up numbers here. You know what I mean? Like, we'll get to them, I guess. But you guys, I'm just staring. Robbie Ray he could put up a number. You know, if things go his way. Peralta could put up a huge number, right?
Yep.
Bueller or whatever. And you play Singer, and you get 30% ownership, and he gets 12 fantasy points. You better get all the production out of the Rocky game or whoever else you're using. Right. Otherwise you're dead.
Right. Absolutely, 100%. All right, you want to talk about Toronto and Atlanta? Speaking of that, in this next one, because this should be an interesting game.
It's it's very similar. I mean,
everything is always right.
It's like I said, like Robbie Ray you can certainly make a case for him, and you could certainly make a case, man, that it's Atlanta City. It's and they'll probably do a little of that, a little of both. I mean, I have Atlanta's my second, if not my best stack on FanDuel, and then they're probably my tied for 3rd, 4th, 5th on DraftKings. And if Pachi makes the lineup, he makes a lot of it work. at a short price. Although he's been kind of cold, but even still.
Yeah.
But whatever. I don't care. And Robbie Ray. I mean, it's really it's dangerous. I mean, it's a hell of a lot more dangerous spot than the Matt Boyd spot, right, against KC, I suppose. Although I don't know who's better, Robbie Ray or Matt Boyd. I don't even know the answer to that.
Robbie Ray.
Okay.
Well, so Matt Boyd. No, I've always been the Matt Boyd guy, but and I've seen enough from him this year. But like the strikeout's not coming back up. I'm just going to chalk up to his matchup. So I actually think that maybe it's closer than I shouldn't have just said that. But Robbie Ray is a guy who's always. I mean, look, he literally has 12 strikeouts, 7 innings in him at all times. Like it's he could put up 35. You know, not as likely as putting up 0. But the guy, look, if he doesn't, they're going to hit some home runs off of him. It's just simple as that. He just doesn't. That's just how he pitches. He's a fly ball pitcher in a stadium where you don't want to be doing that. The fly ball / strikeout pitcher. He has a very brief history with Atlanta, but it hasn't gone very well. Atlanta is a team that you like. I like them against righties in general, but I like them against lefties. And the other thing about Robbie Ray is you can absolutely run on Robbie Ray, and we know that Albies, but especially Acuna, even though he's been a little bit different since the injury, it just feels like such a like. I mean, I'm going to take a quick look at my ownership here because I want to see where Acuna is projected. I'm guessing he's going to be one of the more popular spend-ups. Well, oh my God, Azuna. That's FanDuel. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, Acuna, I mean, people are going to have a hard time getting 6K. I'm just going to say Acuna in this particular matchup is probably the best play on the slate. Just in terms of who I think would have the most highest average median points of every player in baseball, except for maybe you could argue some of the Colorado guys.
Tatis, I guess.
Yeah, it's a tease. But the one thing is, like Acuna with the splits advantage and a guy you can run on, it's like an automatic, it's just it's just, whatever. He's going to get on almost 50% of the time anyway. All he has to do is do it once, and then he's already got a good floor. I really like Acuna here, I guess is my long and short of this. I'm a little confused, I guess, at why no one wants to play Toronto. Is it just because the other bats on the slate?
Yeah, I mean, I have Toronto as a secondary or tertiary stack on DraftKings. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I'm a believer in this offense. They've got a lot of power. They also love to run. This is a game where this is the kind of game you might see like 6 or 7 stolen base, maybe more. That's a huge number of points right there. We've seen that with Toronto already a couple times this year, and I'm not sold on a big Bryce Wilson guy. Also, Atlanta's bullpen has been pretty garbage. At least it was as of a week ago. I don't know if it still is. I've sort of taken some time off here, but I think playing a guy like Teoscar is a terrific play at a very affordable price. Grichuk, but more Teoscar than Grichuk. Bichette and Guerrero are expensive on DraftKings, harder to get in. And I don't know if you need to prioritize this lineup, but those guys are just kind of interesting. And then if you did want to make any sort of a stack, Biggio is really cheap at 3,400 and Jansen at 26. Are we maybe at the point with Jansen where we just start like, I don't care where he's batting, maybe just give him a shot. Like, we know the guy's got power. What did he homer in those 3 games in a row? Like at one point, he did. That's who he's.
He homered 3 games in a row, and then they sat him.
Well, they have to sometimes, with the catchers. But then you've got Kirk also when they play him. Like they're both good power. I mean, they both have power, and Kirk is going to be good too. So
they have a good catcher's hitting coach.
Yeah, they're good. Or at least they're good at spotting catchers on the come up. So I do like Jansen as a catcher option, and I like Teoscar are my favorite guys over there. And then other than the Kuna thing, I'm okay with skipping Ozuna. The only thing is he's going to be 1,000,000% owned. Literally, he might be one of the most popular position players on FanDuel, and he'll be unowned on DraftKings. That's your argument. Also, you have a guy who's good against. The problem with Ozuna, he's good against righties too, but Robbie Ray gives up a ton of power, and all of these guys should be in play. I mean, are fine. Like I can argue for Riley or Swanson, or obviously Pache makes everything work. Contreras as your other catching option, even Freeman in the lefty. It's just, we've seen so much hard contact from Robbie Ray. Now, if they're touching bats for a team that doesn't miss all that often compared to most power hitting teams, it seems like more on the Atlanta side than Ray. But of course, I'm going to have a Ray little hedge pitching thing. But I really like that in general.
I do not believe that Osuna will be as popular on
FanDuel
as some of the other guys.
Okay, I would project he's. What do you think he's going to be on? 30%? I'm going to guess around 30%.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't have him as that much of a lock over there. So if I don't, then he probably won't be as, you know what I mean, like quite as popular.
I'm just saying every day I've played since we've been, and he's been terrible this year for the most part. He's been like up. He was this. You know what he was in the last day I played on Friday, 60%.
You serious?
Yeah, because he was 2,900 and
now he's 33, right?
I think he's 29 in FanDuel, isn't he?
I think he's 33.
Oh, you know what, Sheets? Yep, you're right. He's not going to be as high owned because I'm looking at his price from yesterday or from last week. There you go. Okay, so scratch what I said about him being so high owned. So I do like Ozuna in that case.
Okay. All right, you want to move on?
Let's move on.
So I do feel as though that the chalky well, you tell me, but if you were a cash game player, the chalky cash game build is going to be Bueller and Brady Singer, and probably the chalky, I guess not chalky, but like the guy that people are going to want to go to in the GPPs is going to be Peralta, right? Because I mean he's got a lot of strikeout upside, and certainly makes a lot of sense. And I agree with that. I actually have him. I have him pretty much on FanDuel. He's like pretty cheap. I have him like tied with Bueller as my top FanDuel pitcher. And on DraftKings, I have him in my top 3. So I guess that certainly makes sense. So I do like him. The only thing I had from the hitting side is you're going to get speaking of cash, you're going to get maybe a 2K Taylor from Milwaukee. I didn't really get so much of the stacks or anything like that. That's really the only thing I had was Peralta as a pitcher, and Taylor is just kind of like a cheap one-off.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, as we sit here real quick, try to get my Peralta notes. Maybe that's why I'm not entering Peralta right. I need to try and just real quick. I just want to see like a little bit of his history with the team as we go here, because they should have had a lot of experience in his short time there. Not as much as I would have thought, and doesn't look like anything crazy except for they've hit 5 home runs off in 58 at bats. That's pretty high. Yeah, I don't know if I like Peralta today. And it's always nerve-wracking to say that with a guy like that who I like in general, I think has just massive upside. And I think if we just think in general, if we're ever playing, like if I just said, playing Stroman over Peralta, that seems crazy. But if you factor in matchups, situation, again, a good Milwaukee, you got a good hitting environment in general, but it doesn't really, I mean, again, I guess if Peralta's on, it's not going to matter as much. St. Louis has I think their lineup is better than people think, and Peralta's been too wild for me to feel great about him. So I'm moderate on him right now. I have to figure out this one later because I really don't know where I'm going to end up standing on it.
I'll tell you this, man. If the Rockies play, maybe even if they don't, I think Peralta might end up being on the lower owned side, only because I mean this Bueller Singer thing is going to be just people are just going to jam that.
I think that, and I think people will talk up this stuff, but I think by then enough people will talk down this. It feels weird to play a chalky Brady Singer. I mean, he was 4,900 the other day, and no one played him.
Well, they love playing everybody against the Tigers.
That's true.
He has 30 fantasy points against them in this last freaking outing.
Right.
and this way you don't have to play Matt Boyd, right? And you don't have to worry, and then you could play all the Tatis and all that, you know what I mean, and all that stuff you want if that game plays. So I really think that combination is going to be pretty well chalky. So I think that as a result, I do think that I think Peralta is going to be lower owned than maybe you might think.
Fair enough, and definitely in play. The thing that's interesting is like this guy. So we've seen pretty good stuff out of Kim, and I actually, maybe he's a decent pitcher and all that. But I don't think I'm going to use him. I kind of understand it, but I don't think I'm going to. I just want to point out that if you don't use him, you can literally play the cheapest stack in the history of baseball. And if he gets wild, you could have it pay off with only getting like 10s out of each of the guys. You don't need to play the full 5-man, but playing a 3-man with like Tyrone Taylor, Avisail Garcia, and Billy McKinney or Lorenzo Cain, who all combined equaled like the same price as Acuna. You know what I mean? So I just think that situation, because that would allow you to do, like, literally you could play, not only that, they'll be low owned. If you played like a mini Milwaukee stack and you just got tens from your guys, but then you played the chalk, but maybe somebody hits a home run, you get lucky and all that stuff. Maybe you get some stolen bases. It's possible too. But you play that with a Colorado stack and your spend ups at pitcher, and maybe you could be in business if you want to spend down that far. Now it's not like their stack stands out to me in general, but when you have a pitcher who can get a little bit wild, give up some power, and you've got a really, really, really cheap lineup full of prospects, basically, I think it's worth taking a shot.
Yeah.
So I have a mini Milwaukee on my list right now.
I'd rather, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do, I think I'm might go Tigers.
I hear you, but I want to also, like, stadiums matter to me, and
yeah, absolutely.
And Milwaukee's a great hitter's park, and it's not going to change because it's in a dome.
That's true.
So, all right, Minnesota, Chicago.
Yeah. So I don't play Dylan Cease, and I don't play guys against Minnesota if I could avoid it. And I might play Kenta Maeda, but I'd rather not play guys against the White Sox.
Can I ask you why isn't Kenta Maeda the chalk? I'm not saying, they're not asking like you decided who the chalk is, but I'm curious what your thoughts are of why he's not the chalkiest pitcher on the slate by a long shot.
Why is he not the chalkiest pitcher on the slate by a long shot? I don't know. I mean, like for me, he's showing up very similar to some of these other guys. And maybe it's because he's playing the White Sox. I don't know. I guess why did everybody become so afraid of the White Sox? I don't know why you like him. You like him more than like Singer, for example.
I might like him more than the spend ups. I might pay like 9,500 for him today.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, 95 is an extreme thing, but like the White Sox have power and they have things to be afraid of. First of all, the run total for the White Sox is below 4. That's step one, right direction. I'd love to see some umpire data later in this game. And the K rates for these guys, well, they're in some cases they're okay. They're mostly pretty high. And you've got Maeda against a lot of righties. That just feels like, and he's 76. I mean, I just don't get it. Like, okay. I mean, also, like, I know that everybody thought he was struggling, and I've, with 4 bad starts in baseball, or actually just 2 kind of bad starts in baseball, people, he's done. And I know it was Texas, but he struck out 8 guys in 5 innings the other night. If he doesn't get in trouble with getting wild, he's pretty great. He has some combustibility. He's given up more home runs in the last year and a half than he ever did the whole time he was in LA, basically. But he's still good. He's still got good stuff, especially if he gets a good umpire tonight. I think this is your best play for tournaments, just because I think he has the best chance of the Singers of all those guys. Even though Singer put up 30 before once, maybe in his career against this same team. I think Maeda has the best chance to put up a really big number.
Well, I think what you want to do is you want to see what that, if that 2K makes the big difference, because obviously I think Maeda is gonna. I mean, I trust him to score more fantasy points than Singer, right, in one game, right, today. But so you got to figure out what that 2K is going to do for you, though. But it's not just that, because you're getting an ownership discount if you play Maeda. So maybe I'm in. I mean, he's right now is my second tier of pitcher, so I'll take a shot.
It's 47 degrees in Chicago, and therefore, maybe I don't want to give away exact odds, but like, double-digit-ish percentage better for pitchers than usual. I mean, and then by the way, Dylan Cease has put up 7,000 fantasy points his last 2 games. I mean, he's got 30. He put up 37 and 40 his last 2. It's pretty crazy. I tend to usually look at the Minnesota bats in this spot, but I can't.
Look at that, huh?
I can't ignore that stuff. So I actually think that Dylan Cease is another one mispriced completely.
Look at those numbers, huh?
Pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, we've had conversations about this before. I've always been on the board with, I don't think Dylan Cease is bad. Like, and everybody else always used to want to pick on him. Well, they're not anymore. And Vegas certainly has respect for him because they're.
I guess not. I mean, look at that.
You got a 3.6 run total here for them. Now, he should have some BVP history. So real quick, I'm going to jump into it. This is definitely not as long as I'll keep.
I'll tell you this. I mean, putting up a number like that against, the Cincinnati at Cincinnati is no joke. I mean, that's
yeah. you get the minor league. I mean, doesn't have enough history here to where you really want to do a ton. I mean, it's not good, the small history he does have, but I do think Cease is absolutely on board. I think Cease actually will get some ownership. I think people are going to see, it's just impossible.
Yeah, I got him literally just about the exact same as Maeda. So, yeah, I'll sprinkle. Yeah, let's go.
I mean, these are offenses, that I love to stack, but when you get these pitchers and even the Vegas total being where it is, like, kind of has to open your eyes a little bit. And both of these pitchers have K upside. They could both hit double digits. It's very possible.
Hey, if I have to throw a guy against Minnesota, maybe I would prefer it to be a righty.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, I don't even know. Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, it's right. You don't have to worry about Buxton and Cruz and everybody.
Right.
No, fair enough. All right. Well, let's go to the next one. I actually think that's a really, like, it could have blown up in our face, but I would love to see with the umpire. That's my most important umpire data game, because if it's a good pitcher's umpire for Maeda and Cease, I think we could see it really, really good for it being a great spot for both pitchers.
Do you like Lance McCullers at all?
A little bit. Again, I don't want to get into a million pitchers. I'll tell you my favorites at the end, but this offense for the Angels has, I mean, I know they had a decent day yesterday. Overall, they've been awful, like awful. What did they go, like, I think that they scored 5 runs in like 8 games at one point. I don't even know how that's possible. And they've had other spots where they've been fine and all that stuff. This is a very, very easy game for me. I'm actually probably not going to get into the pitching because there's a lot of question. Maybe it's a good day for the 111. Maybe I will end up touching a little bit of these guys. Because I mean, again, Ohtani's always hit or miss. I don't really want to play him. I'd rather take a weaker lineup than play him against Houston. But at the same time, I just made an argument for guys against the White Sox and Minnesota. So why wouldn't I argue to take a pitcher against Houston, who I also think has upside? McCullers has been really good with the K stuff this year. Gets to face a lot of righties. I guess if you get a great pitcher's umpire and maybe they suck everywhere else, I could sort of shift over to him. But overall, I don't think that's what I'm going to do. And I am very interested in just a couple individual plays here.
Okay.
I really like, and Justin Upton at 2.5, we're getting a little bit absurd.
So yesterday, he was 2,500. And all the content providers were coming in saying, okay, what you got to do is you got to play the Angels and not play Upton, because you just can't play Upton as chalk. And he hit a home run right out of the gate.
Was he a crazy chalky?
No, like 9% or something like that.
That's where I think he'd be. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, look, unless we're talking about
because he didn't bat, he batted like 5th or something like that.
Great. You probably bet 5th or 4th tonight. I mean, I on board with Upton at 2,500 at any time. And McCullers can also miss over the plate and give up some. And then on the other side, as much as it's not the most exciting thing in the world, if I try to look at to pay up at the infield a little bit more than I do the outfield, just because there's usually great value for some guys in the outfield, although at the same time there's better hitters out there usually too, so it's a little tricky. But Kyle Tucker against Ohtani, I definitely have some interest there. I have some interest in Alvarez. I don't think I'm going to get to much of Alvarez, but Tucker, I could play Tucker and Upton combined for as much as I could play, again, Acuna. I just think it's interesting. And I don't know how much of it I get. If Tucker gets up higher in the order, he'll be really popular. But if he stays 7th even, I'm happy to take a shot against Ohtani, who, what I believe is, and I've got to double check this, I think you can run on him. And Kyle Tucker is also, for what it matters, finally hot, which he hasn't been. So for me, I have the Angels right now as my top stack, given value, given everything else. And that would be, and it's a little scary because, I mean, McCullers is not bad. I mean, it wasn't. Wait. You have the Angels as your top stack against McCullers. Wow.
Yeah, that's why it's scary. It's like,
okay.
But, I guess because of the price, I mean, I got Upton so cheap. I have like Taylor Ward is cheap. I know you don't like playing, but who's hitting the ball okay is the Jose Rojas. Trout, Walsh freaking just feeling it recently. Yeah, so that's just kind of where I am. And then you can play Suzuki at catcher if he gets in. And he didn't get in yesterday, so he might be able to get in today. I don't know. That's kind of where I am, and it's a little frightening. But that's what it is. And then on Houston, I actually have Houston as a kind of a secondary stack as well. Just kind of taking like you said, Tucker's might be my favorite, and then Brantley, Alvarez, Bregman. Then up to you whether you want to put Maldonado for cheap or Miles Straw for cheap or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. So I hear you. I hear you with the plings. McCullers, as much as he is, I'm not going to stack against him as on a big.
Yeah, I know. I don't blame you.
But I don't mind like some of the bats. I'm not saying that some guys can't get there, but I don't think it's the ideal situation for me personally.
So what do you got for weather in this Colorado game?
So in Colorado, let me just see real quick. I'm looking at the hitting thing, which so no matter what the anything else, it is a little it's pretty nasty. Cold, blowing in a little bit, not much, so it could change. 42 degrees though, and rainy. So all of those are not like ideal for hitting usually, and not as. This contestant is. Sorry, I don't know what that was. Not as high of humidity as it has been in a few of the other ones. I'm trying to call up an updated one just because I want to see if it makes a difference. I think this is a dangerous-ish game, but I think that I would be surprised if they didn't play it. Colorado finds ways to play games. I know that they, especially coming off of a game where they didn't play. So my instinct would be to try to, I honestly am curious where the ownership's going to end up here, because I am more than happy to fade these types of situations. The thing that scares me is that because of the weather being the way that it is I think other people will feel the same way. And off the top of my head, I don't have interest in the San Diego bats. I'm not sure if people Lamette's not going to go long, but they've got a good long bullpen they can play. If Lamette was just straight up going in his normal self, I might be playing him here. It's pretty rare to see Colorado at home with a 3.7 implied run total. That's sort of like shocking, actually. And they made these guys so cheap on San Diego. You want to play Grisham and you want to play Myers and you want to play Cronenworth, and even Machado's not, and Tatis. These are the normal prices for these guys. This is nothing special. I will remind everybody that as much as we think Senzatella sucks and he gives up this hard contact and all these things, well, the guy pitches in Colorado. He still has a job for like 8 years. He's been doing this. And for whatever reason, seems to limit damage, especially when he's in Colorado. I don't have a great explanation for all of it. I just know it's the truth. So I am okay with, obviously the Padres will stand to show up as the best stack on the slate by a pretty good amount. I am okay with, at the moment, especially again, unless the weather changed around and something, to try to maybe just get pieces of this game and not stack San Diego fully. And I mentioned my favorite bats. I don't think we need to, for a guy who look, he does give up some damage, but even so for example, he's pitched 100 at bats to this Colorado lineup, which is not a ton, but it's a pretty decent amount. But what's interesting to me is that, and the K rate is low. Okay. Most of these games, obviously, half of these probably are in Colorado. He's only given up 2 home runs in those 100 at bats. Now, it's just something to think about. Like if you're trying to find a reason to fade a popular stack, and that's just sort of what you always see with Senzatella. Now, it doesn't mean he'll never give up home runs. Doesn't mean 2 home runs might not be enough and you might get some stolen bases and stuff like that. Sure. But I just don't see the reason to play chalk in baseball in these situations. And especially when the field looks like it's somewhat neutralized for power. Now, does that mean Jake Cronenworth and especially Trent Grisham are not great plays? Trent Grisham is a phenomenal play. Trent Grisham is probably if you're playing a cash game today and you don't play Trent Grisham and the weather's, it's not going to rain out there, you're making a big mistake, in my opinion. But so is Will Myers, a great play. And you can get the only other thing about this that speaks to maybe wanting to stack it is I don't think Hosmer will be popular. I don't think Profar will be popular. I don't think Myers will be especially popular. So if you wanted to stack and include 2 of those guys, you could maybe get different with your stack. But I'm on board with maybe not trying to stack there and just taking my favorite pieces.
Why, I asked this somewhat rhetorically, but why do you say that Lamette's not going to go very long?
He hasn't pitched more than 2 innings, and they have no reason to do anything to this superstar. This guy could be it's not a joke. He may end up being one of the best pitchers in baseball someday. It's unfortunate for his career that he had some injuries early, but you see it in his games back. That's what they did. They pitched him 2 innings in each of them. And I can't see them giving him any sort of leash. And even if they did, maybe you're talking about like 60 or 70 pitches. There's no reason for them to extend him. He's their future. He's part of their their future, and they're going to want him in the second half of the season. So I just don't see it, especially in Colorado. It is a shockingly low run total for the Rockies. I mean, really.
That's right. That's the only reason I bring it up.
But that speaks more to what I'm saying. That you have really, really good mid and long relief in San Diego too.
Okay.
So that should be factored in. It's almost like if it was Lamet and we knew he was going to go 6 innings, it's probably a 4+ run total.
Well, have there been? I mean, when I asked how do we know he's not going to go, has there actually been like manager speak and like anything like that where they've said he's going to only go 40 pitches or anything or?
Yeah, well, we just saw it twice in a row. I mean,
right. Okay, no, I get you, but I mean,
without giving up a run, he pitched 2 innings in each of them. Maybe this time they stretch him out to 3, and you know what? It could even get to 5 if maybe he's only throwing 50 some or 60 pitches. But we're just reaching on this slate. We've got lots of guys in that range who we can use.
And I just, for the record, I do have San Diego as one of the top 3 stacks on DraftKings, and I have them a little lower ranked on FanDuel.
Gotcha.
Want to move on?
Yeah, I think this next game is really interesting.
I think it's incredibly interesting.
Here's your other cheap game of the cheap stack of the day, right, Sheets?
I guess.
You're not into it?
Yeah, you got no. Okay, this is what I'm into. I'm into the fact that on FanDuel, let me just confirm that before I open up my big mouth. But I'm pretty sure that on FanDuel, I have Miami as my top stack. Let me just see it.
It's weird because I actually think they make a lot more sense on DraftKings, but
yeah, that's where I am right now. Again, I'm working on my models, how I do this, but given price and everything like that, that's where I'm at. Is I'm much more inclined to play the Miami side than to, and we have this discussion. I have this discussion with myself every day, and I have with you like 80 times a season. When you have a pitcher that people like to attack versus a team that hitters that people like to attack, do you take the cheap pitcher or the cheap hitters, right? And the answer usually, well, who's going to be lower owned? I don't think either of these guys are going to be high owned. I don't think people are going to play Bumgarner. I don't think people are going to play Miami. So I think you could do either of them if you wanted to. I'm just kind of more inclined to believe that Bumgarner's no-hitter and whatever was more of an aberration than
he's been unbelievable, to give him some credit, which I don't usually like to do.
And I did say he does have tricks, but
yeah, I know, but I mean,
I think he's go up against the greatest hitter in baseball in Adam Duvall. I don't think that.
What's the hope there? Not to mention that Lewis Brinson is also in this lineup.
And Lewis Brinson is in the lineup. I keep forgetting, and not to mention Miguel Rojas. Yeah. So there's like a lot of power here that he's got to fade. But in seriousness, I like Cooper, I like Duvall, I like Anderson, I like Aguilar on FanDuel. I did not quite get to them on DraftKings. I guess maybe it's because there were other teams that I could get to easier. Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah.
I mean, as a matter of fact, we glossed over the game pretty quickly, but I told you I did like Toronto a little bit. And I also did like Minnesota a little bit against Cease. But anyway, that's where I'm at, and I'm looking for a reason to, I guess, not play Pablo Lopez. I mean, aside from the fact that he's like projecting terrible, I'm not getting to him in my spreadsheets or whatever. I mean, I don't know. He's not that bad, right? I mean, he's got 20 fantasy points most of the time, and Arizona's not the greatest hitting team in the world. Should he be in the mix for us or no?
I like him a lot as a pitcher, and I think he's fine. Okay. As a real life pitcher, I do like him. He doesn't wow you with those 30 fantasy point upside things, and we've got guys beneath him who do. He just faced this team. They both just faced this team. This game just happened. I see the argument for I see the argument. I actually see the argument for both pitchers, to be honest with you. I think there's a part of me, like if I played 150 today, you will definitely see like at least 5% of Bumgarner lineups. Like there's enough upside there. He's just shown it 3-4 times in a row or whatever. But I'm much more on the side of the bats in Miami, and it's going to depend on the roof being open. So we'll check on that. I'll check on that before later when I do my stuff live with you guys. And then I will check on, that's the biggest one. And then the umpire data. Those are the two things that are factor in. I don't know if about the full entire stack, but Duvall, and then you do have the Brinson, who's again, another one of the near min cost guys who no one in the world history will play. John Birdie, depending on where he's hitting, Garrett Cooper, Aguiar. These guys are all solid plays, even down to Sandy Leone if you need a catcher. I don't love Sandy Leone or Brian Anderson. Actually, Brian Anderson I do kind of like. But there's just enough cheap bats and you can pick from them. My favorites being Duvall, Cooper, because of the price, Brinson, and then Aguiar.
Okay.
All right, final one. So this is going to be a tough guy to fade here tonight. Sheets?
You really like Kikuchi that much, huh?
That's funny.
Yeah. So Buehler's my top pitcher on the slate. He's got that mixture of being one of the top talented pitchers with probably the best matchup of the talented pitchers. It's just kind of the only thing you got to hope is that maybe people don't play him as much because it's the last game. I don't know. You can fit him in because you can play Singer if you want, and you can probably make some okay lineups playing him with Peralta. So he's certainly going to be my top play on DraftKings. And on FanDuel, he's tied with Peralta for me just because of the price.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I'm at. And you know what? I didn't get to any of the hitting in here. Do you like the Dodgers at all? I mean, Kikuchi's tricky, especially against lefties. I did not get to the Dodgers here, and I did not get to any Seattle.
Yeah, first look is not loving the Dodgers for me. I do think you'll get DJ Peters in the lineup today, really cheap. They raised Nusei's price, and I kind of like his swing for everything type of swing. A guy like Chris Taylor would make a little bit of sense. I actually think people will try, I just think Kikuchi gets absolutely, he gets no respect, and then all of a sudden, until he's like 6K, and then everybody's, oh, we got to play Kikuchi, whatever we do. No, it's true. It happens every time. But I think he's actually just in real life a pretty good pitcher who will give up some hard contact, will give up some home runs, can get a little bit wild, but he's a pretty good pitcher. Everybody, Seager would be my favorite of the lefties. Betts is obviously, again, though, I'm not playing Betts over Acuna today, but I do like Betts. It's just I'm not going to play him over Acuna. I'm not going to play Chris Taylor over other guys unless I was stacking. And even then, it just doesn't feel, none of the prices feel where I really want to go there. And the weirdest part is I think there will be ownership on the Dodgers today. Maybe not. Maybe because they don't get their lineup out. Maybe it'll just have some projections. But they have a reasonable run total against a guy who for some reason everybody wants to pick on all the time. Just beware also that Peters, Nusei, potentially even Taylor, but probably just Peters and Nusei are probably getting 2 to 3 at bats maximum. Just throwing that out there if you're going to stack them. I personally don't have the Dodgers high on my stack list. Do you want to reiterate some of the things we got?
Yes.
Okay.
So my top pitchers are Buehler and Singer on DraftKings with Peralta next. And then, depending on how many lineups you play, a whole bunch of those other guys like Cease, Maeda, Boyd, those guys. With respect to hitting, my top stacks are Angels, then San Diego and Washington on DraftKings. My next tier would be KC, Houston, Atlanta, then sprinkles of Toronto, Minnesota. FanDuel pitching, Buehler and Peralta about even. Top hitting over there would be Miami, Atlanta, and Washington. San Diego, not as much. I'll throw a couple of one-offs in, and then you can just go through yours. My one-offs, first base, my favorite on DraftKings is Josh Bell. Third base would be Sterling Castro. Shortstop would be Tatis and Turner. Catcher, Salvador Perez, and a couple of outfield cheapos, Taylor, Upton, and, not as cheap, but Christian.
Yeah, I like all those guys you mentioned. Just my favorite overall play is Acuna. As of right now, I have Kenley Jansen as my favorite catcher. Grisham.
Danny Jansen?
What?
Which Jansen?
Danny Jansen.
Danny Jansen. Okay.
Duvall and Brinson in that mini stack. Moreland, Matt Olson. A lot of interesting one-offs. My favorite stacks are, I have some interest in both sides of the Boston and Oakland game, just very small, again, probably 2 men or something like that. Atlanta, I love. I also think Robbie Ray is mildly interesting, which I have to make a note of. But I really like Atlanta. Toronto a little bit, mini. mini Milwaukee, mini Miami, and then the Washington Philly game. So I just want to, and then my pitchers are Buehler. My favorites are Buehler and Maeda, which I know it sounds like I don't understand how people are projecting less than 10% on Maeda today. Maybe that's going to happen. Then in my opinion, I'll just take the long-term results and I'll just say everybody's wrong here, unless there's something I don't know yet. Stroman.
No, he's gonna be low owned. His projections, the early ones across the board are the same across. So I
figured the low owned part would say the same. And I said unless there's the part I'm worried about is maybe that I hear something about we want him to only go 5 or 6 innings his next time out or something.
You won't get that.
So I have to look into that a little bit. Well, but Stroman would be my next favorite with Cease, Peralta, sort of rating, and Singer all sort of rating similarly, even in different ranges. And then your wild cards would be the Robbie Ray, Matt Boyd guys.
I mean, if you really, if you really wanted to get different, this is kind of nasty. You could fade Buehler. You play Peralta, Maeda, and you're.
If I fade Buehler, I probably have to pay down another thing because I don't think that Buehler has too many bad outings here. But maybe he struggles enough to just put up like 20 or something. Where maybe a 7K guy can get me more than that even. I mean, it's not like he's a lock to be the highest scoring player on the slate. And actually, Buehler's another one. As good as he is for DFS, he's a better real-life pitcher than that. I mean, in the offseason, he spent to contact more. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball and is way too cheap. But, I mean, look at you look at this so far, though, and all of the start, he got 6 starts so far. He's walked 2 guys. You know what I mean? You have no worries about control. It's not like a good pitcher we have to sweat every little thing. Oh, my God, what's he going to do? But he also might not strike out 11 like Peralta, although he does have that in him too. He struck out 18 in his last 2 games. I mean, anyway, I really like.
But I'll tell you, I know life is not this easy, but I mean, you're looking at his game logs here, and you got Cease putting up back-to-back 30s and 40s. You got Means putting up nothing but 30s and 50s all year. You got upside from Robbie Ray and Matt Boyd and and Peralta. I mean, Buehler could pitch like a perfectly great Buehler game, go his 6 innings. Get 23 fantasy points, or you know what I mean, and he'll be happy with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
the Dodgers will be happy with it, but just the DraftKings the players might not be.
Yeah, exactly right. And by the way, that's just what happens with these guys. I mean, couldn't say it better. But you are getting some safety that you're not getting from everybody else, and it's not all foolproof safety. I want to say it to everybody. It's pretty sad for him, by the way, that he's 1-0 and he's been he gives up no runs and he's 1-0 this season.
So here, this is actually very, I think, instructive. So like, I know people are gonna ask in the Discord. So Sheets, you want to play Seattle, right? And we talk about this with respect to how to get leverage in baseball. If you really wanted to get like double, triple leverage, that's what you do. You play the hitting team against the chalky pitcher. But I think that in a case like this, you can get just enough leverage, just not playing Buehler and getting leverage off from the other pitchers that will outscore Buehler, and not have to, because like the way that Buehler can bust without Seattle doing anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that in a situation like that, that's probably what you want to do is just I don't think you need to play Seattle to make that.
Really not a stack. I mean, if you want to take one shot on a Kyle Seager or something, that's not the worst thing in the world.
Right.
You can, these Seager brothers, I swear, for some reason, it seems like the days they homer, they both homer. I don't know what that is, but now you get them in the same game. All right. Well, this was good. Guys, good luck to everyone out there. Sheets will not be with us this evening, but I will be there. I might have to have a blackout of my face because it's by the moment even changing, and it's going to be a little lighter because as much as I can block out the sun, I haven't been able to fully block it out. But good luck tonight. I'm feeling good about this one. Great to be back, and it'll be fun to chat with you guys later.
So drink your Campacho or your smoke, whatever you do, because we got to do NBA.
All right, guys. Good luck to everybody.